More red flags for you to avoid as a data scientist trying to read a job description and get a feeling for what type of company you're working at and whether or not you want to actually apply for this job. And more red flags for you to look at if you're writing job descriptions and avoid so top talent is actually attracted to your job, not running screaming in the other direction. So let's get started. One of the biggest red flags is something I see maybe in 1 in 4, 1 in 3 job descriptions that are coming straight from a recruiter who is absolutely lazy. They'll get notes, and sometimes they post those notes directly into it's just copy paste directly into the job. This is a sign of a recruiter that is completely disengaged. They are sending out mass emails and spending zero amount of time looking at resumes or doing anything else because this isn't something that if you weren't on autopilot, if you were capable as a recruiter, you would never copy and paste. If candidates don't have the following, please don't send them. You wouldn't put that in there. You would just put the requirement, and the requirement's actually further down in the real job description. This is a sign of laziness, and this is a sign of a recruiter you don't want to work with. So if you look at a job description, if you get an email and you see notes, like the hiring manager told the recruiter something and the recruiter just pasted it into the requirement, stay away from that. That recruiter is not someone you want to work with. Number one, because they're not going to put any work into this. I mean, if that's what they're doing, seriously. And number two, realize how sick of this recruiter's resumes does this hiring manager have to be to send that feedback? How sick of this recruiter is the hiring manager? And if the hiring manager is that tired of them, how much success do you think you're going to have getting that recruiter sending your resume in with a batch of obviously low quality candidates? So avoid that. Anytime you see it, just run the other direction. Now you see these modifiers in front of requirements sometimes. Solid, extensive, strong, proactively, excellent. And then this one's, I don't know whether to love or hate it, reasonably advanced. Like that's some pretty low expectations right there. I mean, I guess yeah, like I said, I don't know whether to love it or hate it. Anytime you see these types of adverbs, you're looking at something that's probably not written by your actual hiring manager. This is HREs and recruiteries. We don't speak this way. We will typically, if a hiring manager, someone who's technical, is writing this job description, those adverbs and adjectives and flowery language don't typically make it into the requirement. So you can be fairly confident if you see this types of flowery language, whoever wrote this is not the hiring manager. And that can be a pretty big red flag because what you're using to screen candidates being different than what the hiring manager expects can cause you as, somebody applying for this job, it can cause you some significant pain. You don't want to go through whatever filter is looking at your resume because they're disconnected from the hiring manager. So anytime you see flowery language like this, it's typically a red flag that means the hiring manager did not write this. It's a good idea to just steer clear of them. Now, on to an actual job description. What I want to cover today is a job description where the company is asking for 3 different people and they're trying to get you to be one person who does 3 jobs. Sometimes you'll see like 5 in a requirement and it's ridiculous. Here's what to look for and at all costs, avoid this. First things first. Yeah, you got the degree. Okay, we're starting fairly normally. 4 years of experience with IT. First red flag. This is supposed to be a data scientist. 4 years with IT, that is sort of an admin. Uh-oh, that's not a normal requirement. Now, Python programming. Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Python, you would expect that in a data scientist, especially specifying machine learning frameworks and so on. Good experience with end-to-end implementation of data warehouse, BI projects. So now you want a BI architect or a BI developer too. We are 3 jobs in. We have someone who is a data scientist. We have someone who's doing IT type systems admin type work. And now we have a BI developer. Huge red flag. At this point, just close your browser. This is someone who is looking for the moon, probably isn't paying for it either. Now, okay, SQL. Yeah, data scientists need definitely to know SQL. Unix shell script. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Every time you see shell scripting, if you see any other sort of IT terminology, realize that they are also going to be responsible for administering every environment. That's a lot of work. That's an entire job in and of itself. So you're not only going to be building, you're also going to be maintaining probably a lot of different environments. And when they start talking about Unix shell scripting, that's a red flag. Look for other IT type, administrative type language, and you can understand why you wouldn't want. Now you're looking at three very solid three different roles. And here comes the fourth. Exposure to Java, Spring, JavaScript, you got Angular and React. So this is not only a front-end developer, this is also a back-end developer. What? We're not even through the first page, and we have an IT admin, we have a data scientist, we have a BI architect, and now we have a front-end and a back-end developer. Knowledge and experience with full, yep, they're looking for a software developer too, and not just one, front and back end. And so now you see lean and agile. You're going through the list for a software developer. This is nuts. This is one of the most egregious examples of a company looking for, how do you not look at this requirement and go, these are 5 people. How do you even say, I want a front end and back end software developer with a straight face and then add all that other stuff? Like, I want a data scientist and what? This is ridiculous. And it continues. I mean, you can tell that they are looking for, this just reinforces everything that was coming up above it. And now, on top of that, we want real-time data. We want Hadoop. We want Neo4j. We want, whoa. Who is this person? Who is this person that you are looking for? I hope you're willing to pay, $400,000 or $500,000 a year, probably more than that, for someone who would have all of this. This is insanity. There's a lot to unpack here. And you've got to understand, this is someone who would be making upwards of $400,000 a year. And there are so few who are proficient enough to really meet any of these requirements. This is impossible. Now obviously, and we want you to be an expert data scientist with at least 3 years of model development. And this is one huge red flag. Anytime you see multiple legacy, uh-oh. So that requirement above isn't comprehensive. When they say multiple legacy source applications, you could be dealing with anything when it comes to your data pipeline. That's a lot of ground to cover. That's huge red flag to run away from when it says multiple legacy platforms or source applications or any of that type of language. No, you could potentially be working with anything. And how are you supposed to meet that requirement? It's impossible. This continues to get worse. Again, reinforcing that they want a BI architect. This is somebody who's going to be a DBA. Now they are wandering into another job. They want a DBA. Somebody's going to be doing integration quality architecture. What? So now you are also a DBA. What? This just keeps getting more ridiculous. These are crazy people. This is the only explanation. These are crazy people. Now, they also want you to be a QA engineer. Want you to do some test scripts, test cases. So you are a data quality engineer too. You're doing master data management on top of all this other stuff. You just go, uh-oh, there's your IT admin. You are also going to be an IT admin. And I don't know why you would put Unix, Shell, Perl, and JavaScript together, but okay. I mean, that's not the worst. That's not the thing that makes the least sense about this. So even something like this, where they're obviously mixing up their languages and applications, that almost gets blended in because everything else is so bad. But if you're writing a job description, don't do that either. And if you're reading one, trying to figure out if they actually know what the role is supposed to be doing, when they start mixing up things like this, just because it has the word script in it doesn't mean you should throw them all together. ETL, data what? Yep. Again, your DBA, BI architect, software developer. Here's your IT support. It's all there. Now you're going to be an excellent communicator working in a team, obviously. Excellent communicator, great. Yes, working with multiple organizations in your spare time. And experience managing. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. And you're supposed to be a leader too. And you're supposed to be managing a team of 5 to 10. And some of that team might be offshore. Okay, this just went from a 400 plus a year job to like 600 plus a year. This is insane. Who is this person that somehow in 40 hours a week is going to do 6 different jobs and be a leader of an onshore and offshore hybrid team working in a global delivery environment? Does this even sound like it makes sense? It doesn't. This is crazy town. What's really prevalent in data science and machine learning is trying to find someone, and you'll see job descriptions that aren't quite this terrible, but a lot of times you'll see a data scientist and an ML ops engineer slammed in together. That's not actually impossible to find. A lot of us have a little bit of a hybrid skill set, but you want to look for job descriptions that are reasonable, meaning that the amount of time that you spend as a data scientist and the amount of time that you spend doing ML ops, deploying, integrating, supporting your models is clearly called out. What they do in a very high quality role where they're looking for someone who's a hybrid is they'll tell you 50% of your time on this, 20% of your time on that, and then 30% of your time on that. They'll clearly split it up so you know they're going to give you enough time to be successful in each one of those roles, and they're not expecting you to somehow slam all this stuff together. Also watch out for this technical plus leadership. The more extensive the leadership role, the less time you're going to have to actually be an individual contributor who does hands-on work. And when you look at trying to manage a team that's both onshore and offshore with global delivery environment in there, which is, if you've done it, you know how complex that is when you're dealing with teams that are across countries. Extraordinarily time-consuming types of leadership, not only personnel leadership, but also project leadership. And you're probably in this type of a role also providing technical leadership. You're doing some sort of a review, and they don't talk about how you're going to split your time up. And they seem to be oblivious to the fact that that's a full-time job just in and of itself. That might even be 2 jobs if you want to be honest about it. But now they're expecting all this other technical stuff. And like I said, this is crazy. But you'll see this happen a lot in roles where they'll split it up and they'll say you're going to spend 50% of your time as a leader and 50% of your time as an individual contributor. But make sure that's actually feasible. When you look at the leadership requirements, make sure that what they're going to ask you to do as a leader is not in and of itself a full-time job. And what they're asking you to do as an individual contributor is not in and of itself a full-time job, because you can get set up to just absolutely fail in your role if the company doesn't give you enough time to do both leadership and individual contributor. So be careful. Anytime you see 4 or 5 different conflicting sometimes roles within the same job description, huge red flag. And if you're writing these, obviously if you had any common sense, you would never write this job description. This is written by someone who's detached from reality. But if you do end up writing a hybrid job description, be realistic about it. Make sure you put in there percentages of time and distribution of your time and effort. And again, don't do crazy